Hello and welcome to the Browns Blitz. Today is Wednesday, May 27th, and this is episode number 53. I'm your host, Rod Bloom, and joining me today is my friend Ray Fernando. Ray, how are things going for you this evening?
Doing great, no complaints. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. You know, Ray, when I was looking at your profile, I didn't realize you don't have that many followers on Twitter.
No, I'm relatively new to Twitter. I use it mostly to just get information as opposed to putting myself out there.
Okay. I didn't know if you wanted more followers, we can give out your Twitter handle and maybe a few people will follow you.
Sure, so, what the heck.
So it's at the land 76.
That's right.
That's a pretty cool handle. I like that. So, guys, give Ray a follow. He's a great guy. I think you guys will like interacting with him. Great Browns fan and just a good person. So, give Ray a follow. Ray, we like to start out the show normally with our Blitz beverages, but we're going to skip that part today just for some reasons beyond our control. We're going to head right into talking a little bit about you and just your history or your kind of your life as a Browns fan. Just kind of give us, whatever you want to share as far as, how you became a Browns fan, just a little bit about yourself, maybe, or some of your favorite memories, anything you want to put out there.
Sure.
The floor is yours.
Yeah. So it's funny because so I moved to Cleveland. I was born out of the country, and I moved to Cleveland in 1976. So that explains the Twitter handle. And for whatever reason, I love football, but the Browns were not my original favorite team. It was the Cowboys. I think it was probably back in the generation where you were either a Cowboys or a Steelers fan. Kind of like good versus evil. Mm-hmm. So everything that I owned, from bed sheets to curtains to book bags to, you name it, including soap, it was all about the Cowboys. And my favorite player growing up was Tony Dorsett, had, his jersey. And I think it was probably in 1980. So I went to the January 1981 game for the wild card. Actually, no, it was the divisional series where the Browns versus Raiders. So I went to that game where it was, minus 37 with the wind chill, forgot my winter boots at school and didn't have, obviously the right clothing to go to a game, but got taken with one of our family friends. And I'm sure I would have had frostbite at the time, but, being dragged along with a group of 10 other adults, I just kind of had to force myself to stay warm. I remember sipping hot chocolate the entire game so that they wouldn't have to take me home early. So I think it was then that I really enjoyed the Browns and just truly felt more of a connection with Cleveland sports. So even though I live in Chicago now, I am a very diehard Browns fan, Cavs fan, Tribe fan, Buckeyes fan, and I raised my kids to be loyal Cleveland sports fans as well. So that's kind of like how I got into being a Browns fan. It's just probably enduring, in person that dreadful game with Red Right 88. And then from there on, I think it's very much typifies the city where we just are very diehard fans, regardless of, win or lose. Even though we have bad seasons, we're always ready for that next season, thinking it's going to be our year. So kind of like an eternal optimist. I like to think myself that way.
Yeah, well, that's we share that. We have that in common. Not every Cleveland fan is like that, but there needs to be enough of us around to kind of, keep the optimism alive.
Right.
Some people are more bashers, like to bash the organizations kind of year in and year out. And, I guess I can understand kind of that mentality after seeing losing for so long. But, for me, and I think for you, being optimistic is just a more pleasant way of life. A little easier way to look at things.
Yeah,
So,
I guess that makes the one time where things actually work out and you win a championship or you have a great year. I think you just appreciate it a lot more. I started thinking back about all of all the negative outcomes in Cleveland sports history. They always have a name associated with it just to kind of mark the fact that it's a pretty iconic loss.
mm-hmm.
Whether it's the shot two, the drive, the fumble, I mean, you name it, it just goes on and on. So what's funny is the year that the Cavs won the championship in 2016, I just remember, for that last minute thinking something is going to go wrong just because you're programmed to be like that as a Cleveland fan. So when it actually happened and we won the ring, it was more disbelief. I think I was probably one of the first people to order as much championship merch as I could online because that's once in a lifetime. And then we got lucky. Like the Tribe almost won that year too. And I live a mile down the street from Wrigley, so I was thinking about going there for Game 5 to potentially watch us win the World Series. And thankfully, I didn't spend an arm and a leg to watch us lose that night. But yeah, maybe it was like too much too fast for us in one year.
Yeah, it seemed kind of crazy the possibility that we could get those two championships, right together like that. And I mean, looking back at it, the way it happened, I really feel like the Indians should have won that series. With just the way Game 7 played out. But yeah, I mean, you as Cleveland fans, I think most of us are thankful that we got one in 16
Right.
with the Cavs. It's like it just kind of took the monkey off the city's back and just kind of feel different. We still need to see something from the Browns, and it's going to be totally different when the Browns win. I just think the Browns compared to the Cavs and even the Indians, it's just a totally different animal in Cleveland. I think that if the Browns can get to that level at some point and actually win a title, sometime in our lifetime, it's going to be, I don't even know how to put it into words. Compared to the Cavs win, it's just going to be so monumental.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've already told my wife that the year that we make it to the Super Bowl, I don't care where it is, how much it costs, but it's going to be once in a lifetime for me. I'll be there for sure.
Yeah. Just well, let's hope that let's hope we're at least headed in that general direction at this point with the Browns. So
yeah, definitely like where we're going. That's for sure.
Yeah. So you mentioned Tony Dorsett was your favorite Cowboy growing up, and tell me about some of your favorite Browns. Maybe through the years, or maybe just a couple of your favorite players.
Yeah, I love Minifield and Dixon. Those were, I think, the original dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then obviously Don Rogers, for the short period of time that he was with the team, just kind of had that presence. I think I was more of a defensive guy. We had Chip Banks and Clay Matthews. It just goes on and on. So I can't say I have a favorite Browns of all time. I was the guy that the one year we actually ended up signing Bad Moon Rising. I don't know if you remember those years. That was the one year I buckled down and got an official NFL Browns jersey, which I'm actually wearing right now, the number 80. So, and then he did not have a long career, but I love Bernie Kosar for what he was, but it just didn't resonate with his style of game. So I would never wanted to sport a Bernie jersey, but I felt like, oh, well, Bad Moon's on the team. There's a pretty cool player, and realized like, whoa, okay, that was kind of a flash in the past.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, and then you watch game footage of the classic of Jim Brown. I mean, boy, that guy was just incredible.
The Browns have such a rich history. It's people who haven't followed the Browns for that long, and it's not like I followed the Browns when Jim Brown was playing or anything, but I've studied the history enough to know about it and heard enough stories and everything. It's just just for the Browns to be able to get back to close to that kind of that kind of level. That kind of level of respect or greatness. It would just be, I don't know, it would be amazing. I think the people of Cleveland, I just can't imagine how the people of Cleveland would feel to have teams like that now.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. It's interesting the direction that we're going because surprisingly we weren't able to get Clowney to sign with us, but it seems as though we're getting more and more big names that want to come to Cleveland. It's almost had a stigma associated with it, so it's nice to see at least we're attracting good talent. And for a bad of a history as we've had with even head coaches, the fact that we're able to recruit quality coaches to want to come to Cleveland, because for a while makes you wonder if you're just running these guys into the ground, like they're here for a year or two and they're pretty much don't have any career longevity. What's it going to be like for the next guy that you're trying to bring into town? So it's good to see that we're at least just influencing some quality talent, whether it's the coaching ranks or players that want to come to the city of Cleveland to play, which is great.
Yeah, and that's why I've fought for a long time, and been very vocal that I wanted some stability. Even if we didn't have the greatest coach in the world, I wanted the Browns to stick with somebody for a period of a few years, just because my idea was that if you kept dumping a guy every single year, you're not going to get the level of coach that you want.
Mm-hmm.
To get. Well, and they've been doing okay. I mean, they kept Hugh Jackson for what, between 2.5 seasons, I'll say. So and then since then it's been Greg Williams for a few games and Freddie for a season. So and they were still able to get they still were able to interview a heck of a lot of coaches, and I think most of them were interested in actually coming to the Browns. So maybe the fact that there are only 32 NFL head coaching jobs, maybe that factors in a lot more than the fact that this is the Browns and you're not likely to have a long career with the Browns as a head coach.
Yeah, no, I agree. I always laugh every single time you hear about Belichick being potentially one of the greatest head coaches in history, and to know that he had his time with the Browns and got fired, and he goes on and has a remarkable career. So at some point, I think to your point earlier about whether Kitchens was the guy or not, I don't know if he necessarily got just the fair shake to at least prove that he could be.
Yeah. I mean, I think with Freddie, I think Freddie's a great guy. I think that circumstances changed from the time he was hired to the time that the season actually started, with some of the trades and the roster buildup and everything. So the expectations were different. I don't think Freddie was the guy for all the veterans that were on the team. Maybe he just plain wasn't ready to be a head coach. That's entirely possible. Heck of a guy. I loved his press conference, his philosophy on life. I'd love to sit down and drink a few beers with Freddie Kitchens, or just plain talk with the guy, because like everything about him, he just, it just didn't work out. I stood up for him for a long time. I still think he did some darn good things. You can't tell me that the Browns, had a completely horrible season when they beat the Ravens the way they did. That they were just, you can't say that the Browns were awful all season long. when you have that game to point to, and it wasn't the only game that they were, that they actually did some good things. So Freddie made a lot of mistakes. It just, and by the end of the season, it was clear that he wasn't going to be around. But I hate to kick a guy when he's down, and I think if circumstances were different and he had a younger team that he was developing, maybe he would have done a better job. It's hard to say.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely think that he was not the right guy. It was, I think, more of a frustration on not the right level of, assessment on whether he's prepared for the job before giving it to him. I wish in hindsight they had kind of just picked the right guy for the job and realized that he had his shortcomings and maybe not realize it after a season into it.
Yeah, I mean, they hired him before the OBJ trade and before some of the other transactions. So I think when they hired him, the expectations weren't as high as what they became. So, you're hiring him, and at that point, the idea is that he's going to work with Baker and bring Baker along. And all of a sudden, by the time the season starts, people are talking Super Bowl. And it's like, and you got this rookie head coach. It's like, wait a minute, this just doesn't fit together.
Yeah, I can't even remember the odds in Vegas for the Browns to win the Super Bowl. It was ridiculous. I mean, I'm usually the guy that's in Vegas and I'll put down a flyer, put $10 on a 500 to 1 or 250 to 1, and everyone was buying into the Browns hype.
Yeah, well, Vegas did all right on that one. But yeah. That's why this season I'm good with kind of sitting back and watching these guys. I like Stefanski. I like so many of the personnel moves. I'm really excited to see what these guys can do, but I also just kind of want to watch things develop and not put all kinds of pressure on anybody to come out and have to win their first, 2 out of their first 3 or 3 out of their first 4 or anything like this, because it takes time to get a team together, especially when you got all new schemes and playbooks and a new staff and a bunch of new guys coming in. So people in Cleveland hate to have patience, but you got to have some patience. And I think the best thing for this team is for Kevin Stefanski to be around for a while. I think that's more important than being all worried about winning 8 or 9 or 10 games this season.
Yeah, I watched this cool piece on ESPN about Stefanski when he was being considered for the job, and just kind of breaking down his play calling schemes, and it's pretty impressive how he leverages the backs and the tight ends just to kind of create the mismatches. So it'd be interesting to just watch a guy that knows the X's and O's to be able to dissect a defense on the offensive side. And it's funny because I lived in California for a little while last year, and I went to the Browns-Niners game on Monday night, and I thought that the Niners were way overrated and the Browns were just going to steamroll all over them. And then I realized, holy cow, like the Niners are for real, and the Browns O-line was just awful. So it clearly made me realize, like, we have to establish the O-line. I mean, they're not the sexy picks in a draft, but man, unless you protect, Baker and allow him to get the reads, and I think they were just doing a lot of things. They were just trying to force things, and he just didn't have the time. So then you realize, like, okay, we can't really compete unless you have a lot more of the foundation blocks rather than just a few big names in key positions.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the Browns O-line, and it was just the pure strength of that San Francisco D-line.
Exactly.
I mean, they were just, I knew they were good going into that game. But that game, I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys are ridiculous. How do you stop these guys? And I knew that the Browns offensive line wasn't great, but I expected them to be able to slow them down at least a little bit to be able to run some plays. And man, that game was rough.
Yeah, no, it really exposed our D-line too. I mean, we were pretty banged up, but they just ran smash mouth football, all night that night. And I think even OBJ, he missed a few just, pretty easy catches. So I think everyone just had a bad night.
Yeah. and that's going to happen. And and I believe that with Stefanski and with what he's going to be doing, it wouldn't surprise me if the Browns come out and look really, really good this season. I just can't set myself up with that expectation, with everything being put together and being so new. Mm-hmm. I need to allow these guys time, to get to where they need to be, because I think that's a normal expectation.
Yeah, I was going to say, in the world that we're living in today, honestly, I'll just be happy to see football, period. So
that's true. That's very true.
A lot could change between now and September. So I think it's just fingers crossed that we are on the road to recovery and we could actually see some live action, which would be awesome.
Yeah, you brought up Jadeveon Clowney. What's he thinking? I mean, is he really the guy that says, "Oh, I'm not going to Cleveland because they stink," or does he really think that he's worth more money than anybody's offered him? I mean, if he's going to turn down the Browns offer, does he think he's still going to get a higher offer now? I just don't see a higher offer coming at this point.
Yeah, I don't know what the thinking is, but I'm sure we will be hearing a lot of stories tonight on SportsCenter. So I don't know what he's looking for, because I honestly think that he had a combination of a high offer along with a team that's clearly on, this year. I think it's going to be an incredible year. So I couldn't ask for a better situation. To have him and Miles as bookends would be incredible.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I think the Browns are in pretty good shape without him, but adding him, just make him that much better. His choice. You can't make him come if he doesn't want to. If he doesn't want to come and play, then that's it's his call. He's got the football. He can take it home and sit there. I guess that's what he wants to do.
Apparently, he said he's just not in a rush to sign, so I don't know what that means.
Going to take a quick break to thank our sponsor, Skippin' Stones. Check them out for handmade stone, shell, and sea glass jewelry, pebble art, and framed poetry. Guys, Father's Day is coming up in about a month. You want to go and check out the yoga bracelets for men, and there's also some framed poetry that could definitely work for Dad for a Father's Day gift. Ladies, there's always stuff there you can check out. Keep your eyes open. There's going to be some personalized sports plaques added very soon. Check them out on Etsy.com and Go Imagine. Just search for the store, SKIPPINSTONEZ. Now back to the action. Yeah. So before we started recording, we were talking about Joe Thomas and the Titan games. I know we both had a chance to catch his performance on that show. That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. For me, I wasn't just, I'm not just watching the Titan games. I'm watching Joe Thomas from Cleveland. And I know he's not originally from Cleveland, but for me, he's an ambassador of Cleveland, Ohio. on TV, and he's also Joe Thomas, who used to look like an offensive lineman, and now he looks like I don't know, like any guy would want to look, I guess is how you might put it.
Like a poor man's Kevin Love, maybe, I don't know.
yeah, but I mean, he's done a great job of getting himself in, just tremendous shape. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just a great performance. Just calm, cool, and collected. Just like a tactician, like he was on the football field. Just wasn't too worried about what anybody else was doing. Just did his thing, and I still don't know how he won. Because
it seemed like the other guy just didn't turn the key.
I'm like, I'm watching it, and I have to say I missed the show, so I watched it afterward. But I'm watching this. I'm thinking, well, I thought he won. I'm looking at the very end. I'm like, oh my gosh, and he sneaks right in there and turns the key at the last possible second. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it's funny. I was watching that, and I was partly surprised at how agile he is. So I was kind of like laughing and cheering at the same time. And I thought for sure he lost, and I was like, oh damn, like at least he had a good run. I was pretty impressed with how well he did, and then for him to actually pull it out by probably less than a second, I was like,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah. So tell me when when people see Joe Thomas now, are they still thinking Cleveland Browns, or is he getting to be such a big star that he's Joe Thomas now on his own?
I think it's partly a little of both. I'm sure if and when he comes back to do more broadcasting, I suspect that will be the face of the Browns. I think it's just a matter of time, as we all know.
Hmm.
But I think everyone will remember him as kind of the consummate Brown, never missing plays. Didn't leave the Browns to go anywhere else for his career. Um, yeah. So I'm pretty excited. My daughter's going off to Wisconsin next year, so it'll give me a reason to root for the Badgers. It's kind of where he came out and made his name.
Yeah, yeah, very nice. Congratulations on that.
Thanks.
That's cool. So, well, I don't even remember when I heard this. I think it was yesterday, but there have been things coming out about what the NFL is saying, and then J.C. Treader saying things on behalf of the Players Association about what's going to happen this season. The NFL said they're planning on playing in front of full stadiums, and and things are coming out about when training camp's going to happen, and JC Treader's like, no, we haven't agreed on this yet, so don't worry about it. It's not settled. Where do you think we are on this stuff? Are we still kind of in a wait and see all around on training camps, on what we think is going to happen for games? Think we're in really do you think we're anywhere near figuring any of this out yet, Ray?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you have to at least make the plans for what if we were to resume a season, what could it look like, as opposed to just sitting on your hands and hope that you get the green light at some point, and then you have to just scramble to figure out how's this all going to look. So, and it will be interesting. I know hockey's further along. It sounds like they might be doing some type of just round robin, 24 team playoffs, just again to try something, right? So I suspect that those types of leagues that move quickly because they're in season will give you a little bit more of a roadmap on, is it working, is it not working? Because some of the questions that you get asked are, what happens if somebody tests positive on a team? Does that mean that you necessarily need to quarantine the entire team, or do you take less drastic measures? Like, so for instance, I heard like a scenario where you've got an offensive lineman who gets diagnosed with COVID, and what does that mean to the other offensive lineman that he's been in meetings and coaches for the entire week? What happens to the guys that they've been going live drills the whole week? So if you think about that, if the disease goes kind of haywire for an entire organization, how would that affect the league? So I think you have to plan it all out, but you just do the best you can. So I think every one of these leagues, including the NFL, they're just kind of doing their best attempt of kind of putting together what the plan could look like. And we're talking about months from now, so we don't know what's going to happen between now and then. And we could have a complete boomerang of the disease, and it could be worse than when it started, or it could be completely gone away. So, but you also have to understand the player's perspective as well. Because they're the ones that are ultimately going to be, the ones that are having contact with other players. I mean, us as fans,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have any skin in the game, and owners, they don't have, they're not on the field, but the day-to-day contact with the players, the coaches, those are the individuals whose lives potentially could be at risk. And what happens if you have a player that contracts the disease and passes away? And will that be a wake-up call to say, all right, this is a little bit more than what we thought it was? Because I think it was like Carl Anthony Towns, his mother passed away of COVID-19. So when you start hearing about individuals that get affected and unfortunately pass away with the disease, it becomes more real. So whether it's the NFL, whether it's another league, that could kind of give you the recipe for what things could look like in September.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, the whole wild card thing is, how do they handle this if a player on a team gets COVID-19 and has been around other players? I mean, what are they going to do? Are they going to have to shut that entire team down for 2 weeks? I mean, because you would think that in most cases that player's been around almost everybody on that team, right? In the prior week or two, I just don't know how you get around that. It seems that they could start this thing up, but then as soon as a few people start, a few players or a few, anybody on the staff, anybody who's been around people, as soon as anybody comes down and contracts this, it seems like it's going to be a mess.
Yeah, I mean, I applaud the leagues for at least attempting to put together some type of basic framework for what a season could look like. But then you realize there are a lot of variables, including getting players and the unions to be supported, because they're looking for player safety at the end of the day, right? So you can't compromise player safety for putting on some entertainment that we'd all love to see. And part of it too makes you wonder. There's probably a lot of the economics, right? So there's a lot of lost revenues with, TV, the networks. So there's a lot of focus, I'm sure, on the bottom line and the need to move forward and not do anything.
Yeah, a lot of things pulling the league and players in different directions. Yeah, so it's all going to play out one way or another. But it's exactly like you said. I think we'll know more, the closer we get to the season, and a lot of it may depend on what the arc looks like, what kind of bounce back there is, or if the thing's under, more under control at that point in time. So let's hope that's the case.
Yeah, one thing's for sure. I think going through this entire experience, all of us, we've definitely appreciate how much sports is a part of our lives. It's the ultimate entertainment, and it's I would do anything to watch live sports right now.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Not KBO, but
Right.
It just doesn't light my fire as much. Sorry.
Yeah. So, have you had a chance to really look the Browns schedule over?
Yeah, I took a quick peek at it. The minute the schedules were released, I saw all of the Browns fans taking to Twitter to predict what the schedule will result as far as what's win-loss record and whether we're going to make another Super Bowl run. But yeah, it's an interesting schedule this year. We got a lot of awesome NFC games. I see the Cowboys and the Redskins are on the schedule, along with I think the Eagles are on it. So it's a lot of cool matchups in addition to our traditional divisional matchups. So I think the season starts off with a bang against the Ravens. So the Browns beat them once last year, so hopefully we can come out with a statement game and beat the Ravens. I think it's in Baltimore for week 1. That would be awesome.
Yeah, week 1 in Baltimore, and then they think they come right back at home against the Bengals on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And then they host the Redskins, and they go to Dallas, and just kind of keep going. And the bye weeks near the middle of the season. I was just kind of looking this over. For me, I think, assuming that the Browns are able to get some wins, and have a decent season. I'm not here to predict. I'm nowhere close to predicting a record for this team. I don't really want any part of that at this point. and I don't even know if I'm going to do that before the season or not, but I'm just looking at the schedule, and to me, the two games that really look like they could turn the whole season if the Browns are anywhere close to competing for playoffs or trying to get to a 500 record or anything like that would be weeks 13 and 14, because they're coming off of they're coming off of a stretch where they played the Raiders, the Texans, the Eagles, and the Jaguars, teams that they, depending on how the season goes, at least should be able to hopefully play with. And then they go to Tennessee in week 13, and then they host the Ravens in week 14.
Yeah, looks like a Monday night game.
Yeah, Monday night game, right. So those two games are really huge, and it could be a factor of just trying to win one of those. I don't think most teams are going to think you can, especially going off of what happened last season with the Titans and Ravens.
Oh, for sure.
Kind of unrealistic to expect to win both those games, but Browns could be in a situation where winning one of those two games could really make the difference in their season, because after that they've got they're at the Giants, at the Jets, and then you never take the Steelers lightly, but they finish up with the Steelers at home. It seems like they always finish up on the road with the Steelers.
Yep.
So they're actually at home this time, which just makes the game a little bit more winnable. That's all.
Yeah, I definitely agree that weeks 13 and 14 will be pretty critical games going into probably, a relatively soft landing with both the Jets and the Giants. And depending on how the Steelers are, for whatever reason, I always think the Steelers are going to be bad, but they always seem to have decent years.
They usually do, yeah.
Yeah, and like last year, like for instance, I thought we'd run away with the division, but boy, like Baltimore just completely surprised me. So I actually think that week one matchup at Baltimore will be pretty telling of how the season's going to play out, because if they can come out and make a statement game, we beat Baltimore last year. I think that was in Baltimore as well. We would, I think, set the stage for, it's a pretty easy week two, I think, against the Bengals. And then you get into more of the NFC play. And then the Colts aren't to be underestimated either. So we've got, I think, those first 2 weeks, if we get off to a loss and go into 1-1 after week two, then we've got some pretty strong teams coming up. So then I could see us potentially being a little demoralized going into week 3, 4, and 5 with some strong contenders.
Yeah. I mean, the Cowboys, I'm sure, will be good, and the game's in Dallas. Colts slipped a little bit last season, but I think we all know they're a better team than that. And then we're in Pittsburgh. Go to Cincinnati, host the Raiders, and then we're back into that stretch again. So it's an interesting schedule, but to me, it doesn't have the series of games that the Browns had last year, where they had just what looked like 3 or 4 games in a row that just seemed like they were against, teams that were almost unbeatable. Looking at the beginning of the season and that. So, not saying that the Browns have any easy games. There are no easy games in the NFL, but I think it's a nicely broken up schedule. And, we'll see how they do.
Yeah, I hope, first, I hope that we get to see a season. And then 2, it would be great to start off with a win. I think that'll kind of energize Browns fans into thinking like, all right, I think last year we all made the mistake that we're going to go to the Super Bowl, and then we got kind of wind taken out of our sails pretty early. So if we could have more like moderate expectations going into this year, because I think we're better than we were last year, but I think people learned their lesson of don't expect too much. Then maybe we can be pleasantly surprised by starting off with a W and just kind of riding that wave.
It would be nice. Starting with a win is always good.
For sure.
Especially in Baltimore. It would be huge for it would be huge for the Browns. It would be huge for Stefanski and Barry. So we'll see. I mean, it's a ways off, obviously, but I think dreaming about that is, it's fun to do. I'll say that. So
Yeah. I was going to say this is one of the few years I really enjoyed what the Browns did with the draft. So I'm hoping that we are able to, actually build some of that talent. And some of these guys I think could make year one impact.
I agree. Yeah, I think definitely. Yeah, I think you're going to see some of those guys really helping out. So should be fun to watch. So how do you feel about finishing up with a little bit of Browns trivia?
Sure.
All right. These are not too hard, but I don't want to try to make you look silly if you miss one. Okay.
Sure.
Because I have the answers and you don't. So, what Stanford fullback did the Browns select with the 9th overall pick in the 1992 NFL Draft?
Was that touchdown Tommy Vardell?
That was touchdown Tommy Vardell. Nice. All right. So, two somewhat related questions. We'll go right in a row with these. Who posted a franchise best 8 kickoff returns for touchdowns during his Browns career?
Well, I can go one of two on this one. Say Metcalf?
It would be the other guy.
Cribbs?
Yeah, it's Josh Cribbs.
Okay. So I was just actually listening to your rebroadcast with Metcalf, so maybe that was on my mind.
So let me see if you can get this one now. Who posted a franchise best 5 punt returns for touchdowns during his Browns career?
Oh, that would be Eric.
That would be Eric, yeah. I had to work him in, so yeah. And then I would not have gotten this one, I don't think. So let's see if you know this one. Despite rushing for only 762 yards in his Browns career, he left the team as its career leader in fumbles.
Oh, boy.
And I'll give you a clue. It's not a running back. They're trying to trick you with the question. It's a quarterback.
Repeat that question one more time, now that you threw that loop in there.
Yeah, despite rushing for only 762 yards in his Browns career, who left the team as its career leader in fumbles?
Fumbles.
Yeah.
Was that Bernie?
It was actually Brian Sipe.
Oh, Sipe. Okay.
Yep.
A doozy.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't have gotten that one. It was kind of a trick question because you're thinking, well, he only rushed for that many yards. So you're thinking, what running back fumbled the ball that many times? And that's a quarterback. So
the good old cardiac kids.
Yeah, that was fun. So, Ray, I would like to give you a chance to leave the Browns fans and listeners with anything you'd like to say to them. Anything inspirational or anything else?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a great year to be patient with the new coach, the young talent that we've got. I think this team is actually legit, but I am keeping down my optimism because I think we got burned so many times. But I'm going to really enjoy this year. Let it soak in for how much football means to me, how much football means to the city of Cleveland, and hopefully that we are on the path of a true winning tradition. So I think that's the thing that I would love to see for the Browns. I mean, we've had so many good years in the past where it's very close, but not close enough. So I'm hoping that we're able to kind of see over the mountain this year and then just keep on up and up going forward. And hopefully we're able to keep these guys for a long time. I'd love for us to just create a tradition where we've got career players, career coaches, and to not give up so fast on the people that we want to put our hopes on.
Very well said. Excellent. Hey, I want to thank you for coming on. It's been great talking with you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, man. I really enjoyed it.
Sure thing. And again, your Twitter handle is @theland76. Everybody, you guys can give Ray a follow there. You can follow me at CleeRodB. And this has been the Browns Blitz. We will catch you next time.